As this year's EU-Ukraine summit wraps up, the top issue at the meeting is similar to the rest of the continent: energy security. Kiev's worry is about the consequences of the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline between Russia and Germany that will bypass Ukraine.
Energy security is a prerequisite for the independence and national sovereignty of Ukraine, because Nord Stream is opening new challenges for Ukraine in addition to the already existing ones.
Brussels is promising to work on mid to long-term strategic solutions to reassure Kiev, including the use of reverse gas flows from the EU to Ukraine in case of shortages. But this won't compensate for its loss of more than €1 billion per year it receives as a gas transit country.
I understand your concerns, Ukraine's concerns about gas supplies in view of much lower gas deliveries from Gazprom. This is an issue not only for this winter, but also for the winters to come. And therefore the Commission, together with Ukrainian experts, is exploring right now different scenarios to secure sufficient supply for Ukraine.
Brussels' focus, however, is on the implementation of judicial reforms and anti-corruption measures in Ukraine. It says it's pleased with the progress made, but more must be done to make sure that the relevant institutions and positions are fully operational and independent. And right now, this isn't happening, as one expert explains.
But the problem is that we have two very well-functioning institutions in Ukraine that are under siege by oligarchs, but also by forces within the president's own party, which is the National Anti-Corruption Bureau and the Special Prosecutory Service Against Corruption. So there's a big fight about the political independence of these two institutions, which are crucial.
At the summit, the EU also reaffirmed its complete support for the territorial integrity of Ukraine in relation to the illegal annexation of Crimea. On Wednesday, Brussels approved sanctions on 8 additional Russian individuals for actively supporting actions related to the annexed Crimean Peninsula. Christopher Pitcher's Euronews from Brussels.
Well, let's talk a bit more now about the outcome of that summit and how it's being viewed in Ukraine. Peter Dickinson joins us again. He's Ukraine editor at the Atlantic Council. Well, thanks for taking time to speak to us. Did Volodymyr Zelensky get what he wanted?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Yes, I think in general he did. There were no major breakthroughs, of course, but the EU provided fairly vocal guarantees of its continued support for Ukraine's role as a transit country in the energy sector. The energy sector was top of the agenda, of course, and this will include holding Russia to the EU's energy regulations, which should significantly restrict the possibility of any cut-offs to Ukraine. So in terms of the all-important energy sector, I think Ukraine received the assurances and the backing that it was hoping to receive from the EU at this stage. Of course, time will tell, but realistically, it was probably as good as they could expect to have gotten from the summit itself. So a job well done from Ukraine's point of view in that sense.
The EU made it clear that it wants Ukraine to focus as well on combating corruption. Is that at the forefront of most people's minds?
Well, a good question. Is it at the forefront of minds? That's hard to say. I think politically it certainly is, yes. I think, Zelensky as an individual, President Zelensky came to power 2.5 years ago, largely on an anti-corruption ticket. This is the perennial issue in Ukraine, so it's always high on the agenda. I think now there is a sense that he has to deliver after having positioned himself very much as a break from the old routine, as a break from the old system, as an outsider. 2.5 years on, that's not really evident in terms of progress against corruption. So he has to deliver for domestic audiences as much as for Ukraine's international partners. Will this have a big impact? Yesterday's talk of anti-corruption, I'm not sure it'll have a massive impact, but I think it certainly all helps. In the past, progress against corruption has generally come through a combination of pressure from Ukraine's international partners and from civil society within Ukraine. So obviously it's good from a point of view of the pro-reform agenda to see that pressure maintained by Brussels.
Let's talk about Zelensky now, because as you mentioned, 2.5 years ago, he was a political novice. Some might say he still is. He's come from the wilderness to the front line. How's he doing? How would you assess his performance? Is he popular?
He remains, his ratings have certainly gone down considerably since the highs of his election when he received 73% of the vote, and an unprecedented landslide in 2019. But in many respects, that was a protest vote against the old regime in general, not only his direct opponent in the vote, but the entire political class, as it were, of Ukraine. His ratings have plummeted since then, but they remain quite high for Ukraine. The Ukrainian model is usually someone comes in as the next big thing, the next savior, and then they fail to deliver, and they are unceremoniously removed from office. Zelensky's not quite there yet. He's doing okay, I would say. I think probably his report card would be a B, perhaps a B minus.